Hi, welcome to another episode of the Just in Time Web Show. I'm really excited you could join us today, and I'm very excited to bring to you a guest, Nicole Marchman. And Nicole is very special. She is a foster parent, but she's also a former foster youth. She's an author of a book, Unbreakable Spirit Arises, From Broken Girl to Resilient Woman. So I'm really excited to have her here and share her experiences and her journey with you. But first, we've got a few announcements I wanted to share. We are so excited. Coming very soon in June is the National Foster Parent Association partnering with the Florida State Foster and Adoptive Parent Association, their annual education conference, and it is called Launching Tomorrow's Dreams Today, and that is going to be held June 5th through the 8th at the Caribe Royale in Orlando, Florida. We're going to post the link right here on the screen so you can go to the website. You can download the entire brochure, and I've got to tell you, it's several days of amazing speakers, workshops, and opportunity for you to meet other foster parents from around the country. So I hope you'll be able to join us there. Also, we've got coming up again the Daniel Kids Footsteps to the Future Conference, and that's going to be May 28th through 30th. Another wonderful opportunity for education, training workshops, and networking, meeting other foster and adoptive parents from around the state. And don't forget, if you're going to take advantage of going to this association conference, you need to register early for childcare or also for the Next Gen conference that's going to be for the teens and tweens that's running the same time. So I urge you to go and check out these links that we put on the screen and get your registrations in early. We posted another great video on our QPI Just in Time website and want you to take a look at it. It's under our featured videos, and it's a 12-minute short film that takes us through the emotional journey of a child who is removed from her family and then enters the foster care system. I hope you can take a look at this and share it with everybody, because it really, really shows the journey this child goes through and her perspective. So it's a wonderful film that we found, and we're happy to post it for you guys. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our guest today and get started on our conversation. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me, Laura.
So could you tell our viewers here just a little bit about your journey and how you came to be involved in the foster care system yourself?
Sure. At an early age, at 0 to 5 years old, I was introduced to the foster care system because of physical abuse from my biological father. And there was actually an occasion where a next door neighbor saw my father shaking me because I was crying and wouldn't stop crying. So I was placed in the foster care, my very first foster care home. And then my parents, completed what we call the case plan. The case plan that the foster care system gives tasks to the parents to do. So my parents completed them. I went back home, and then this repeated 2 other times. And then I went back home. And then between the age of 5 and 11, I was basically back home. But the abuse didn't stop. The abuse actually intensified, where I would be thrown on the ground. My father was 6'2", so you can imagine the drop on the floor from that. And then there was the experience of sexual abuse about every night from my father, and my mother not being able to protect me because she herself was being a victim of abuse. And then my sisters came into the world. I have 2 twin sisters. They were born when I was 7 years old. And then I had to be a fast growing adult parental sister figure and taking care of my sisters until I was removed because police and social workers started getting back involved between the ages of 8 to 11, and it just got to a point the abuse wouldn't stop, and they were concerned about my safety, and so I was removed at age 11 and went back in the foster care system until I was 18. I went through 16 foster homes and 3 group homes.
Wow, wow. So one of the things that struck me in reading your book was your plea for help during this time, because you recognized when you were back with your parents that the abuse was continuing, and it seemed to me that you were trying to get some attention. Could you
Yes.
tell the viewers, just because I want them to understand that perspective of really recognizing, when a child is going through this and still potentially in a dangerous situation, because you were reaching out, it seems,
Yes,
for more help.
I would say starting about the age of 6, I was getting really tired of the beatings and having my father getting away with the abuse and my mother not being able to cry for help. So someone had to do it. And I guess I took it upon myself at that early age to start going to school. And there was one particular teacher who just continued to express concern. And she did it in very subtle ways. It wasn't, hey, I see something's wrong, or you're going to tell me what's wrong. It was, do you want to talk to someone? I noticed that you don't talk to the rest of the students. And so every time she would do this, it was as if she was getting a coin from me of trust. And so after a while, she got basically enough coins. And I decided to let my wall down and tell her what was happening. I was actually one of those children, like the Little House on the Prairie show, I always like to refer to, where the girls in that show, they had to dress head to toe and clothing to make sure that no skin was showing. And that's basically how my parents sent me to school. Even if it was 90 degrees weather outside, it didn't matter. And so that teacher started feeling alarmed that something was wrong.
Right. Because they're afraid you're covering up the bruises.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And so there was one incident that I remember her asking, and she asked it she didn't ask, so why are you wearing, these long sleeve clothes? It was more, we're, maybe drawing or playing a game, and then that's when she comes in and asks her question. And so I'm able to, my guard is down, and I'm able to answer that question.
So then they called in an abuse report and law intervened, and then what happened?
So basically, once I answered that question, that was when my world was shaken all over again. Police were dispatched basically to my parents' employers, and from there, my dad was arrested. However, this happened on countless occasions, and my mom would go and take my dad out of jail, basically, changing the story. And I always say that it was one of those walks of shame, because we lived near the jail, not that far in walking distance, because my mom didn't drive for controlling reasons from my father. And so I would have to walk with my mom to get my dad out of jail. So
you didn't get removed again at this point?
No.
So I think that was one of the interesting points, is that they arrested your dad.
Yes.
But they didn't
remove
your
me.
Situation and remove you. So you remained in the home.
I remained in the home, and when they kept me in the home, what they decided to do was place a social worker in the home and provide early intervention. However, it seemed like we were in early intervention forever, because it wasn't stopping anything.
Did it get worse? Like after they found out that you were kind of responsible for speaking up maybe a little bit in school, did it get a little bit worse in the home?
It did get worse at the home after they found out that I was the individual reporting the abuse, because my dad, he was a deacon in the church, and he was very secretive. So he felt that it was the neighbors or it was someone butting in. He didn't suspect that it was me. But once he suspected it was me, then that was when things intensified with the abuse.
Wow. So fast forwarding a little bit in the story. So you finally got to that final removal and were not able to go back home.
Yes.
And then eventually, what happened in the story, which led you to where you're at today?
Well, I was removed and placed into the foster care system, as stated before, and just lingered into the system. And once I aged out of the system at 18, I went into relative transitional independent living, where I was able to reunify with family on my father's side. And that lasted a good year and a half. However, that's basically crumbled as well, and the reason for that was because I had a cousin in that home that attempted on 2 occasions to rape me. So the little Nicole back then had to revert back to what she did growing up at home, which was to go to school. That was my safe place, and report. And once I report, I was kicked out, and unfortunately I had nowhere else to go. And so I did end up homeless, and then to escape from the homelessness, I ended up moving in with a boyfriend, and then later that led into marriage, and then that led into finding out I'm reliving the cycle all over again.
Repeating the cycle. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is we as foster parents, we hear about that a lot. How in a lot of the children that we take placement of and bring up, that their parents were in foster care, and it is
a continuous
cycle sometimes, and how important it is for us to learn from people who've been through it and learn how we as foster parents can try to help break the cycle, in both working with the parents and also in how we work with the children.
Exactly.
So it was challenging, I'm sure. 16 placements. So if you were to tell our viewers, who are foster parents and caregivers that watch the show, when you hear 16 placements, you think, what happened? What was it that led to 16? And I'm sure that some of the placements were because you were in and out of foster care. So some of those. But then there was also some placement disruptions. So what is it that you would tell foster parents? Because this is a big thing at QPI. We don't want foster kids to get disrupted because it's so difficult on them. What would you want to share about your experiences and all those disruptions and numerous moves that you think that would benefit our foster families who are watching?
Well, I would say to the foster parents who are taking in foster children to get to know the children that are coming into your home, to be patient, to practice tolerance, even when you may have those pressing, hectic and stressful days. Find times to get away for yourself, because if not, you'll burn out. I think also it's important to utilize QPI trainings, so that way you're packing in tools into your toolbox, so that when you have moments with children who are coming into your home, and it might be a surprising moment that you've never experienced before, you'll be able to get some suggestions or some techniques on how to handle. It's also very important to build a support system. I know for me as a foster parent, my church is a big support system for me. I have a lot of mentors that help me as well, and I think if I didn't have my surrounding network, I probably wouldn't be as intact as I am, or insane as I am.
Which is it, intact or insane? I think you have a little bit of both, right?
Both.
Probably. So, well, that's interesting, because I think when I hear of youth who've kind of gone through this and been in and out of a lot of placements, I think what a lot of them say, and I'd love you to share your perspective, is, I wish they understood my behaviors at the time. Like, I sabotaged it, and there was numerous reasons, it seems. But I think that a lot of times the reason the placement fails is because of behaviors, certain behaviors. What would you tell caregivers and foster parents about, those behaviors?
Well, you make up a very good point of being in the 16 different foster homes that I was in the 3 group homes. A lot of that was because I had foster parents who did not understand my behavior. I also had foster parents who thought they had good hearts and they were doing a good of taking children in. But once you get into something, sometimes you don't understand the full severity of what you're getting into. And so it's important as foster parents not to wait until the issue is going to erupt, but to prepare yourself and over the course as you're being a foster parent. And I always remember I had a good social worker when I was in foster care, and she always told me, because I had one foster parents towards the end who were basically my mom and dad. They were the last set of foster parents that I had who took the time to include me a part of the family and who took the time to provide that love unconditionally despite how I may have acted. And they didn't take it to heart how I felt, how I acted.
Your behaviors personally.
That is correct.
It is hard.
It's very hard.
And now,
yes.
being a foster parent,
yes.
which Nicole is now a foster parent
yes.
too, you know how hard it is, and sometimes
to not take it personally.
To not take it personally,
yes.
those behaviors, and to realize, I think that there are things that will trigger a behavior that we don't see, but it's
yes.
it's part of trauma training to
correct.
know that something may have happened in the past
mm-hmm.
and which triggers this behavior, and we're like, what did we do, what's
mm-hmm.
happening, and why is this kid acting
yes.
this way?
Yes,
right?
Correct. It's very quick to ask those questions, but what I find myself practicing and is number one, and I talk about it in my book, is to step back and before you react, because if we react before we step back, then we're quick to yell back, mm-hmm. and that could be a trigger for that child, because that could be what their environment was like. And so we have to be very conscious of how we respond. And for me, coming from out of the foster care system, I have to step back before I respond now as a parent, and especially, and a lot of us, we never know how to be parents when we first got children. Mm-hmm. And then for me, coming from a toxic environment, growing up, I always, though, have to go back to remembering those foster parents who did teach me what love was, mm-hmm. and pull from that, or to teach me, they showed me patience and they showed me tolerance. Well, I need to show that. And on top of that, to find ways to reward them or find ways that are going to work. So it's trial and error, mm-hmm. and not beating ourselves up. But what I wanted to say as well, being a former foster youth, I have to remember, hey, I used to act like that. Mm-hmm. So there's no sense for me to overreact or get upset with this child, because that used to be me. Mm-hmm. And if I think like that before I act, mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to act with patience, and I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to be loving, and I'm going to find out, okay, why is this child acting like this? Mm-hmm. And then having prior experience working in group homes as well, mm-hmm. I've learned those skills as well. Mm-hmm. So it's been a well-rounded experience for me.
What would you tell the viewers, like really the difference in how you felt in being in a foster family versus being placed in a group home?
With foster parents, it can provide a home environment, and it could be an environment that these children have never had before, versus a group home where you have a lot of children, you have staff coming and going. So it's also that relationship building. And not to say in group homes that they don't establish relationships, but it could be in a foster home more consistent because they're around the clock versus a group home staff where they can come and go. They could be fired the next day, where I remember when I was in group homes and I always would fall for certain staff and then my heart would crush. Especially the same thing with social workers, and they're gone the next day, and then you start wondering, what did I do?
More trauma.
More trauma.
You know, it's hard to maintain like really long-term
connections. Exactly.
And that's what's so important for these children is
yes.
Sometimes I guess you feel like, you know, you've been sort of dumped on by your parents and then dumped on by the system and then all these, you know. And
then you start questioning what is wrong with
what's
me.
Wrong with me?
Yes.
Like why is this happening to me? What's
yes.
wrong with me? And then that's a tough situation to be in, I think. So
yes.
it's important, I think, that, you know, people make a commitment to the kids and really stick it out. And like you said, I think an important piece of this is that support network. You know, how has your support network really helped you in this journey?
I would say without my support network, I wouldn't have 3 kids that I have right now. I think my hair would be pulled out. I wouldn't be together right now.
Well, so tell our viewers, so what led you to go from this life of being in the system to now being a part of the system and being a foster parent yourself? Because that's an interesting turn there.
It is. Well, it's the same the same path of why I chose to be a social worker. I believe that we all go through trials and tribulations for a reason, and if we make it out of it, there was a reason why we made it out of it. And so I also work with homeless youth between the ages of 18 and 24, and I tell them the same thing, that if you can make it out of it, then that means that there's someone else that is out there that can hear a message of hope, or who needs that same motivation. But for me, with foster children, it's a ministry, same as social work. But most importantly, I didn't have a mom really to teach me or to love me the way that I think that I should have. You know, my mom passed away about 11 months ago. But now with like the boys that I have right now, I believe that learning more about my mom is helping me to be a parent to these children, and to be that parent that I didn't receive. And it also is that overflowing love that I want to be able to provide, and that's, I believe, the overall reasoning and why I chose
sort of
this
wanting
path.
To provide what you felt that you should have received as
that
a child.
As well, yes.
And so you look at these children out there and you say, I didn't get that. I want to.
So I want to provide it to them, and it also gives me another way of paying it forward, because, like you stated, there's many things that I may be providing to these children, or in my work, that I didn't receive. And so I want to make sure that these kids know what it feels like and plant those seeds into them, because if nobody else does it, at least I know that I did. And that seed will eventually grow, and they will remember that.
That's awesome. That's right. What we can do, just that little bit of time that we have them with us.
That's right.
Let me ask you this question that
Yes.
I think would be important for foster parents to understand is, throughout, you know, your time in the foster care system and growing up, even though your parents had, you know, really let you down and abused you and failed to protect you and all this, you still wanted to maintain a connection with them. You still had always hoped that there would be a relationship. And I think sometimes as adults, you know, who haven't really been through this ourselves, you know, it's hard to understand, because we say, oh my gosh, you know, why would they want to be with that parent, because that parent's abusing them and everything. So could you kind of explain it to, you know, to the people who would be watching, like, you know, how that feels to want to still maintain that connection and sort of like make amends and with them even after the abuse you'd been through?
Sure. I can even give you a story. In one of the group homes that I was residing in when I was a teenager, I think I was about 12 or 13, I ran away from the group home and I called myself hiking on 275, going to my parents. And my case manager was apparently called and saw me hiking on 275 and asked me, "What in the world are you doing?" And I just said, "I'm going to my mom and dad." And she's like, "But you can't." And I said, "But why not?" And to me, even fast forwarding to today and, my 30s, I feel that we all are born a mom and to a mom and father. We don't have control of the mom and father that we receive. And so that love a child establishes, and whether that parent does us good or bad, that love stays. And so, for example, with my mom, before she passed away, I remember with my traveling and the studies to Trinidad, and I remember my one prayer, and I said, and this was maybe about 2 years of writing my mom. This is my adult years, writing my mom and trying to establish a relationship with her, because I knew what type of environment that she was in with my father still being abused. But I just told God, I said, I just want to see my mom one more time, because the last time I saw my mom, I was 18, and at that point, I was in my late 20s. And so I said, I just want to see my mom one more time. And I had heard that she had heart surgery. And it really tore me up, because here I am, I'm in another country, and who's to say that I will see my mom again? And when I came back a couple of months after that trip, God just worked it out where we had church revival in my parents' neck of the woods. It was not planned by me nor my parents, because they didn't know I was coming there. And they were there, 2 rows behind me. And no one can ever tell me that God doesn't answer prayers, because I got to see my mom. And I didn't know that that would be my last time seeing my mom, because she passed a week later.
Wow.
But prior to that even happening, I had one last letter from my mom, and that was my mom asking for forgiveness.
Oh.
And to me, that's important. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it has molded my purpose even more of my studies for being a licensed clinical social work that I'm working on right now, to gaining a practice so that I can provide counseling and mending broken families, especially in domestic violence.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful, and I think it's good to remind us of the power of that bond, even through the worst treatment, and that we as foster families, I think, have to respect that and have to just constantly remind these children how special they are, and that nothing that's happened is their fault.
Exactly.
Because like you internalized it to some level and felt, this is me, is me, and especially when you're having all these placement disruptions and everything, that's challenging.
Can be very challenging. And the children that always come through my home, what I always try to practice with them is when they talk about their mom, I talk about their mom with them. Because I want them to understand that that's your mom, that's your dad. Despite that you're living here, this is only temporary, and hopefully one day you'll be back home soon. And if they say, "Oh, Miss Nicole, I miss my mom," or "I love my mom," I make sure that when we pray at night, we include them in our prayers, because you can't take that away from a child that's in your home. And so to me, I think that's critical, that you include that in the conversation.
So there's been such a shift in child welfare practice and family engagement and co-parenting and everything, and now so you're a newer foster parent under, I'd like to call it the new QPI way of doing things, right?
Yes.
So How do you feel about working with the biological families and co-parenting? And do you think that mentorship role, like where the foster parents, try to help teach a little bit of parenting and things to the biological family, how do you feel about that? And do you feel that could have really changed things in your home, in your situation when you were younger going through the system?
Yes, on both fronts. With the boys that I have in my home right now, I believe that because they're actually a repeat back in the system, it's a blessing that they're back in my home, and I believe a part of that is because I did feel that a part of my whole heart is that there has to be co-parenting, and that parent, we were able to establish a bond, and we were able I was able to mentor her, and I was able to hopefully break some cycles with her. And to raise her awareness. And because of that, I feel a shift in the difference that I can make. And it was actually brought to my attention that the middle child of the three boys requested me, even the grandparent of these children. So the power of co-parenting is critical, and
building that bond with the family. Now it's so sad that there was a removal, and
right.
Mom maybe went backwards a little in her case, but on the flip side, for these kids,
it provides some stability.
Stability, yes. Going back to the same foster parent,
yes.
who has the relationship and is still yes. working with mom, and
yes.
that's really awesome.
And so if it was during when I was in foster care, I think it would have made a world of a difference. But to be quite honest with you, Laura, I believe things happen the way that they happen.
Absolutely. And that's why you're here today.
Yes.
And you're taking care of the little ones that you have and making a difference through your social work,
yes.
through writing your book and sharing your story,
yes.
and also the work you're doing with internationally. Nicole's working with some orphanages
yes.
internationally, and so it's really, like you said, you hate to feel like you had to go through a terrible thing, but it is always, to me, great when you go through a situation and you realize that you can benefit others from it. And
yes.
and obviously you've made it into, your life passion,
yes.
to make a difference. So
it's a part of the healing process for me when I can help others.
It is. It's awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sure it moved many of our viewers, and I hope it really gave them some perspective. And definitely just send that message home, how much foster parents mean and what a difference you can make in the lives of these children. And we just thank you again from QPI for everything that you do, and we want to continue to provide that support and quality training that you need to do the best job possible. So just a few closing words here. We love to hear from you. So don't forget to email us, send us your requests for topics, any questions that you have. Keep an eye on our website all the time at www.jitfl. That's for justintimeflorida.com, and we will always have our recently posted videos, our upcoming trainings, and we just look forward to hearing from you. So till next time, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again.